Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our final installment of the Sterling Masterclass Series put on by the Primavera Fund in conjunction with PMAY, the Philadelphia Music Alliance for Youth. Tonight we have the wonderful Julietta Curenton, a flutist from New York City, joining us to guide us through this masterclass. And we have three very talented students playing for her today. And without further ado, here's our first student.
I'm Caleb Becker, and I'll be playing Syrinx.
Bravo, bravo. Wonderful job. I'm just looking around for names and I'm just meeting all you wonderful flutists today. Can you remind me of your name as I'm searching through? Caleb, excellent, Caleb. I think I've heard you before, and this is really a treat to be able to hear this particular piece, Caleb. Now, how old are you, Caleb? What grade are you in?
My sophomore year.
Oh, okay. Going into junior year. Great. Well, this is a good time to learn this piece. What do you know about it? Because instead of me just lecturing, I'm like curious what you know, because you obviously know it very well. What do you know about this piece? Maybe the composer or about the context of the piece?
Like the story behind the piece?
Yeah, anything that you know.
So it's about this, I think it's like a faun, and he's in love with this, some kind of like sprite or some kind of Greek creature.
Yeah, mythological creature.
Yeah. And then she doesn't feel the same way, and she's running away from him. And then she hides and turns into these like reeds, and then he cuts the reeds to make a panpipe to impress her, but then that actually killed her. And so then the rest of the piece is him kind of slowly figuring that out and then being distraught. And yeah.
Yes. Beautiful, excellent. You know the story. Excellent. Yes. I know it's a bit of it's mythological, so it's not very realistic, okay? But it's ethereal, and it's, you can hear that storyline in the piece, So I love this piece because it was one of the, I don't know if you know, and other flutists listening, it was one of the only solo pieces that were composed after Bach's Partita. So, and it was very theatrical, so it was very, very different from the Partita, but that's why it's so special, because it's one of the first solo rep that we have. And almost all flutists have recorded it, and it's just very popular. So glad you're doing this. So I wanted to ask you, it's interesting. We're coming out of a pandemic, hopefully, things have been moving very slow for most of us. I know most of my students feel that way. And, so maybe there's a temptation just to kind of get going and just to, we're running out the gate as quick as we can because, we just want life to kind of return to normal. So what I felt a little bit, when you were playing this piece, I felt like, I'm glad you know the story, because I was wondering if you knew the story. You have this beautiful sound, your phrasing is gorgeous, it's just, you're perfect for playing this piece. But I was just wondering if you knew, like, if you were following the storyline or at least picturing it in your head, because it felt like you were just trying to get to the end, right? So I was just kind of wanting to hear a little bit more of that story in what you do. So actually, that just means take your time. If you notice in this piece, there are bar lines. But when this piece was first composed, there were no bar lines. And I think Debussy did that because he wanted us to come up with our own interpretation as to the rhythm, as to the phrasing. So nothing should really feel metered, right? So you can take your time. You don't have to be in a rush at all. And I think you're going to do that really well. Why don't you start? Let's just kind of start from the top. Yeah, I want you to take about 30 seconds to go through just the first line. Let's see, how can you stretch that out? It might feel a little strange. Try to do it without altering the rhythm too, because I know we have these dotted eights. You want to stick to the rhythm, but I just want to see what it sounds like if you're thinking a little bit slower. So take 30 seconds just for the first line. Okay, so that was great. That was about 15 seconds. Good. Go a little bit further. I know it's going to sound really long and just, really staid, but that's the idea. I want to see if you can really slow yourself down. Just allow it to kind of linger. That's better. Did that feel like it took a long time?
It feels more like mysterious, I guess, than when it's like longer.
And that's an excellent word. That's an excellent word for this piece, because it is supposed to be this, like you said, this pan flute wishing for Syrinx to be alive. So it's you can hear like the heartbreak in it, kind of a little bit of sadness and wishing. So we want to definitely bring that out, right? So what I was going to suggest to you, your phrasing is lovely. What I would say is take more time on the held notes. So like the dotted eighths at the beginning. And actually every time you see a downbeat, that is where the line is. So just look at that first line. Look at all of the notes on the downbeats. Why don't you tell me what all those notes are, and then I'll play them. What's the first note on the downbeat, second downbeat, third downbeat?
The first downbeat is B flat.
Great. Second one?
Another B flat.
The downbeat of the second beat of the first measure?
Is A flat.
A flat. There you go. Awesome. Third beat?
Is a G flat.
Good. And now how about the next measure? First beat and then second beat.
And then it's a B flat and then another B flat.
Right. So you have that's the line. Why don't you try playing that for me, Caleb. Then one more. The half note. Be thorough. Excellent. The second line, all the downbeats again. And as you're doing this exercise, this is really helpful in figuring out where the line is. But as you're doing it, try to do everything in rhythm. So that next line would be. Okay. Try it again, the second line, and then go on to the third line. Natural.
Oh, you want to keep going to the whole line?
Yeah, go through the whole line. So maybe start from the beginning of that third line. So B flat, and then you have B natural. So I just wanted you just to kind of go through that and be aware of what's happening on those downbeats, because that is basically the melody or the line. So I want you to make all of those notes that you just played, the landmark notes, you know, your goal notes, okay? Everything in between is leading to these downbeats, okay? And that'll help all of this have a little bit more of a flow, you know, because you're aware of what the line is, okay? Can I just hear you play the first three lines as is now? Just use those downbeats as a landmark. Caleb. Okay, so I see you really focusing on these long notes. What it made you do, though, it made you speed up a little bit. Did you notice that? Yeah, it sped up the tempo quite a bit. So we don't want exactly that, even though you really did what I asked you to do, which was bring out those held notes. You did that really well. But yeah, you don't want to alter the rhythm. This piece is a lot like an orchestral excerpt. You guys learning orchestral excerpts in the Primavera Fund? Yeah, so you play in orchestra. So when you play an excerpt, like think of Daphnis and Chloe, or what's one of your favorite orchestral excerpts?
I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but yeah.
Okay, that's okay. Afternoon of a Faun, it's a huge one for flute. You know that one? Right, so excerpts should always have a sense of freedom, but because we play the excerpt in an orchestra, we can't alter the rhythm too much, right? Because we're playing with other people, okay? So in a sense, there has to be freedom, but within like a box or actually a boundary, okay? And we have to find a way to create freedom, still keep this boundary. That's exactly what you need to do in syrinx too. I know I told you that originally there were no bar lines for this piece. He wanted it to be very free, but not so free that we're altering rhythms. Okay, so I want you to, as you're doing this, don't lose track of your actual beat. Okay, so this is about, I don't know, do you have a tempo marking for yourself when you're playing this?
No, I didn't play with it.
Interesting, no tempo marking. How do you know how fast to play it?
I just kind of listened to recordings and played it about how fast they did.
There was a lot of variation in those recordings, I'm sure, right?
I just picked a tempo in the middle that I felt sounded good and was, felt right.
You know you're playing then. Okay, I like that. But it's always good to come up with a tempo so you can stick with it. So I actually didn't clock this, so I'm going to clock it now. As soon as I can find my metronome on my phone. There it is. Okay. It's about 56. This is a quarter note. So we want all of those long held notes to be given their full value. And once we can do this in rhythm, then we'll know where we can have some freedom. Okay? Because we don't want the rhythm to be altered, but we do want to sometime, push against those boundaries to create a little bit more soul. I call it soul. So at first, the first time you do this piece, it has to be with a metronome so that you're aware of where the boundaries are. So why don't you try it at this tempo? It's going to sound, very, kind of in a box, but that's okay. Keep the rhythm and focus on the long notes.
Let me keep going.
Yes, that's great. There. So in this tempo, it was so great. The first three measures were great. In the fourth measure, it's slower than you think. Those are just 16ths, not 30 seconds. Why don't you try that fourth measure and then go on? This is so much better. It's so much better. I'm hearing a tempo and I'm hearing great rhythm. But those last three measures, why don't you just take a look at those again? If this is our tempo, this is the quarter note. Okay. So every half note should get, I know that you know your stuff, but just indulge me. Every half note should get how many of these? 2, right? You're just kind of rushing through that C flat. Are you running out of breath?
Not really.
Well, if you have breath to spare, let's hear the whole phrase. Yeah, hold it out. There's even a retenue at the bottom. Sorry, at the end of the third line. What does retenue mean?
Like slow down.
Okay, so you don't do the opposite. Don't speed up. Slow it down. Let's just hear those last three measures of the third line. Was that torture?
It wasn't the worst.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it because it sounded really nice. Okay, so you're probably feeling, again, like this is a bit of a box, but now I'm hearing how you're holding out these long notes so we hear the line better and you're not altering the rhythm. These are the first steps in this piece. So why don't you go on? Continuing with this tempo. Okay, and go till about, yes, I'll stop you whenever. Good, good, good. Okay, so this section, it sounds a little bit more like you're familiar with the rhythm in this section. This doesn't feel as loosey-goosey as the beginning did. This is feeling a little bit more structured, so that's good. All right, so as you're trying to take time, I can tell you're trying to create more freedom. And actually, he calls for that. In the fourth line, what is that directive that Claude Debussy gives you? Starts with or as French would say.
A little bit of movement.
More movement. So it is a little bit faster. Okay. So if you maybe use the movement, only move on the moving notes. If you have a held note, it's meant to be held. But the moving notes can have some more direction. So for instance, I'll just play a little bit for you. You're going to hear me especially move through the 16th notes, okay? Because I'm rushing to get to a long note, okay? Remember, the long notes are the melody. Everything in between can move. See what I'm doing? It's kind of hard to get within a half an hour masterclass, but what did you hear me doing with the 16th and the 32nd notes?
They were like, instead of lingering on them, they kind of pointed towards the next long note to kind of get back to the held notes.
Exactly. And so that's the idea. That's the idea. You want to try a little bit of that and the un peu mouvement again, and then keep going. Go on. Slow down in the Sede. Great, we only have about 4 more minutes left, so I'm trying to give you as much as I can in the minutes that we have. Beautiful, beautiful. So in this section, in the Sede, into the rubato, right? What are those little apostrophes that you see? I know they happen throughout the piece, but they really happen here. When you see those apostrophes, what do they mean? Yes. Okay. I don't know, have you ever been in a conversation with someone and, you know, they're just talking and talking and they never take a breath?
Yeah, it's the worst.
It's the worst. I find a lot of teenagers are like that. You guys, you're just so good at just talking. As you get older, you slow down a little bit. But yeah, and it's difficult to understand them because they just don't take a breath, you know, or there's no punctuation in their sentences. So I think of breath marks here as punctuation, and they're part of the music. That's why he has intentionally written them in. So when you see a breath mark, it doesn't mean just glance at it. It means really just wait, because for him, the breath and the pauses are just as much part of the music as the note. Okay? So in the second page, when you're going into the second line of the second page, just see how I took my time? Okay. Yeah. I want you to do more of that. Do more of that to just kind of allow this breathlessness to happen in the piece as well. Basically, I'm trying to get you to do everything that you see on the page, okay? And do it bigger and slower. That's all we're really doing. And then correcting a few rhythmical things. So why don't you start that pickup to the second line? Okay, that was beautiful, but I think you could do it even better. That rubato section was a little bit, kind of went really fast, and so it was difficult to find the notes. So slow it down, try it again. Excellent, Caleb. Okay, really beautiful. So the more and more you're going to play this piece a lot in your career and your time playing the flute. So just the more you think about the story, and like you said, how mysterious it is, I think the more it's going to allow you to slow down and just think about what Pan could be playing about. Like, what is this? What is the lamenting song that he's playing? And the more you do that, it'll slow this down and it'll sound a little bit more evocative. Really, really great job. Thank you for playing.
Hi, my name is Christopher Wise III, and I'll be playing Fantasy by Georges Hugh.
Finito.
Thank you, thank you. That was wonderful. I love this piece, and you guys are playing it really well together. How long have you played this duo together?
Actually not that long. Like, we actually had like a rehearsal that day of the first performance, and then we actually rehearsed again today.
Oh yeah, you sound like a professional. Sometimes it's just the day of or the day before, but brava, bravi. And you have such a powerful sound. Are you in high school? Okay. What year?
I just finished my sophomore year.
Okay, sophomores, yeah. You have such power in what you do. Like every single note had presence. I never felt like there was a lack of support. Just everything felt really powerful. So I think that this is a fabulous piece for you to play. It's usually you see it on a lot of competition lists, because it is really, it's a fantasy and it shows off everything that we can do. And because its opening is pretty profound, it's a really beautiful opening, and it stands out. So, but I wanted to know, as you're looking at the opening, let's look at that and compare it to rehearsal 2. So, what dynamic do you see at the beginning of the piece?
It says forte.
Okay. And then what about at 2?
I actually don't have numbers.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Rehearsal, in my edition, rehearsal 2 is at the Moder, the key change, the first key change.
Okay, so it actually says piano.
Yes, there you go. And then one more section. I have rehearsal 5. Do you have like measure numbers or anything, or?
It says it has like a tempo, then tempo 1.
Perfect. So tempo 1, the key change when it comes back to the original key change. Now look at the second measure. So the measure after the tempo 1. What's the dynamic there?
Piano.
Right. So you have this opening with this, these open fifths. It's forte in the beginning, but then when it comes back that third time after 5, it's piano. All right, so that's already a stark difference. And then let's compare the opening to rehearsal 2. So forte and then piano at rehearsal 2. So he's basically saying the French use dynamics a lot in order to show difference in characteristics. You'll hear a lot of French players, like when you hear the dynamic come back, instead of them getting soft, for instance, they'll change the tone color. So instead of something full, they'll do something like, and change the quality of the sound instead of just a dynamic. It's a very French thing, and I've always admired that about the French school of playing. So I think what Hugh is saying to do here is that when you play the opening forte, it is that full boasty sound that you have naturally, all right? But then at 2, it should sound very different. Okay, it's not as extroverted. It should feel actually very introverted. So I would love to hear what you do at the beginning now, keeping in mind that Moder is going to sound very different. And I know that in the beginning it's forte, but about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars later, it says piano. So you have that opening theme again, but it's piano, okay? But it goes right back to fortissimo, so it's basically a very strong beginning. But I would love to hear the beginning. I'm basically saying the same thing over and over. Start from the beginning and then start from 2. Make it sound very different. It should sound a lot more mysterious, introverted, and kept. Now, but what is the tendency though? Whenever you're trying to play a little bit more introverted, what can happen with the intonation?
Your intonation actually gives I feel like it fades a little bit.
Yeah, what do you mean by fade? I like that. What do you mean by that? Can you describe it more?
Like if I play piano and sometimes my tonguing is feels weak as compared if I'm playing forte because it's more strong and tense, I would say.
So it affects your articulation, yes, okay. Because the air pushes our tongue forward, and when you don't use a lot of air, then tongue has nowhere to go, okay. But what happens with the intonation, pitch? As we're trying to get
You can
a little bit more.
you can actually get a little bit flat, I believe.
Yeah, exactly, because we're supporting less. So you don't want that to happen, but you definitely want this to sound very different from, you know? So let's just create those two different contrasts and just keep that in mind about the dynamics and what the French do. Okay, start again, please. I'll stop you there. Beautiful, beautiful. The piano led you so beautifully into the modern. It was a huge difference. Could you hear that contrast that time? I did. It was phenomenal. And you did it without intonation coming, going too low. All right, I'm hearing excess noise. Oh, it's gone away. Yeah, you didn't let the intonation fall. It was very, very clear, but it was just a different character. If you were to name the section and give it a characteristic, just be a composer for a while, what characteristic would you put there?
Very like shy, very like sad and shy at the same time, and very like just and you're just very emotional.
I love that, shy. I would never have thought of that word, but exactly, timid or shy, absolutely. Compared to the beginning, so it kind of feels a little schizophrenic to move from one emotion to another so quickly, but that's exactly what it calls for. And one other thing, kind of what I was talking about with Caleb in taking time. I mentioned you guys are young, so you're gonna want to speed up everything, and you're just great technicians as well. But piece like this, he incorporates a lot of cadenzas, right? Times where the piano is not playing and you have like runs, like, where'd that go? This is the third line. Oh, I'm looking at the score. This is a bar after rehearsal 1, but you'll recognize it when I play it. That part right there. So the piano's just holding her note. So those sixes don't have to be completely in tempo. So that's a moment where you can take your time. And then the bar after, what does "c'est de un peu" mean?
It means to slow down a bit.
Yep, slow down a bit more. So he's saying, take your time, take your time. Okay, and then you go right back into tempo. That's why he's always saying tempo. Tempo 1. He's reminding you, go back to tempo here, but he's doing that because the moments before the tempo, you were to take your time. Okay, so more of that, taking time and coming back to tempo, taking time, coming back to tempo. And then the same with, why don't you try this? Because I would love to hear that Modere section again. Okay, before Modere, I loved your cadenza, Christopher. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 before Modere, with the double tongues. Yes, that was paced beautifully. But even the 13th, probably the 15 notes that you have after that. Yeah, that doesn't have to be rushed. Doesn't have to be rushed, you know. At liberty is what it says. At libitum. Okay. So, and before you do this, just keep this in mind. Even though in the last piece, I don't know if you listened to Caleb play. Could you hear his piece that he played beautifully? Okay. So I was trying to tell him to interpret it like he's playing an orchestral excerpt within a box, you know? At least the rhythm had to sound like it was in a box because we didn't want the rhythm to be altered, right? But in a piece like this is very different. Fantasy, okay? You're supposed to take more liberties, okay? It's a soloistic piece. It's a different type of playing, you know? You're not playing in an orchestra here. And you have a really conscientious pianist behind you who is listening to every nuance that you're playing. So don't feel inhibited, don't feel rushed. Be the soloist, okay? Be the soloist, and she'll follow really beautifully, all right? So you're gonna start about 4 before 2. And one thing I wanted to say in this Modere section, which is so beautiful, now you're taking your time. Whenever you see a crescendo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 bars into the Modere, the pianist is doing it really well. I want you to do that as well. And you can do it by using your vibrato in a way that spins the sound forward. Because let me just be more descriptive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars after 2. The crescendo begins on that second beat. Okay? And what do you have on the second beat? You just have a what?
I just have a D, I believe.
Oh, think about the second dotted quarter. Sure. Notice that.
I'm sorry, I got lost. Where are we?
Okay. I know it's hard because you don't have the rehearsal numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars after the Modere.
Okay.
The second beat should be a D. Right, and you have a held D, okay? But he also says to crescendo. So how in the world are you supposed to like crescendo this note, you know, and move and continue moving along with the piano? You do it with your vibrato, all right? Even if you can't increase the dynamics, increase the speed of your vibrato. So. So keep the vibrato spinning. What I heard was beautiful, but I heard you kind of give up on your vibrato, so we couldn't hear crescendo. I heard. See what I'm doing? The vibrato is stopping, but I want you to do the opposite. Spin it. Let it get fast so you can crescendo with the piano. All right, so why don't you try this section, 4 before 2.
I'm sorry, what section?
Your cadenza? Beautiful, beautiful, Christopher. Yes, I'm hearing the contrast. Okay, I'm hearing the contrast between the beginning and that Modere. Modere is beautiful. One thing, and then I want to hear just the last section, the fast section. Okay, so the rallentando into the a tempo, basically the recap of the Modere when it comes back. Okay, do you know what that is? You just finished playing that. It's 1, 2, 3, 3 bars before the key change. Yeah. Okay, I love the rallentando and the time you took. Continue that roll, just continue it and continue diminuendoing, because this is very reminiscent of the opening of Modere. So it should sound back to that calming, that shy characteristic. Okay. I felt like you wanted to give it more body, but I liked it kind of coming back to what you did before. It reminded us. So yeah, don't worry about coming up again. That was beautiful. Okay, want to play some of the ending, this fantastic fast ending.
Replay 71 tempo. Where we just stopped?
How about the Très Vif? Yeah, second section.
Right here, the key change at
Is it number 5? Number 5?
Sorry? Okay, mine is number 8, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Faster
Yeah.
section.
Beautiful. You're such a great player. I'm so sorry. I just wish we had so much more time because you guys are playing this so beautifully. It's just so much to touch upon. I get excited when people play beautiful. You know, some people just like sit back and relax because it's so nice and they want to listen. But I get excited about the details. So brava. So you have this Très Vif. I wanted to ask you, Christopher, how you feel about the tempo that you're taking. Is it comfortable, or do you think you can go faster? What do you think?
I have faith in myself that I can go faster, but at tempo 71 is like where I'm like comfortable at, where I'm not like antsy.
Okay, I hear that. You definitely don't want to be antsy. But the section Très Vif, it should again feel very different from the opening section in general. There's the fantasy, and then there's this crazy Très Vif section. So it does some people play it too fast, I think. But I think in general, if you're thinking of it in one, that's going to help you with the flow of this. If you're thinking of it in three, it'll get to be a little bit pedantic. It's too like this, too vertical. So we don't want that. We want it to be horizontal. So what's is that a comfortable tempo what I just hummed, or is that a little bit too fast? Maybe that's a little too fast. Well, then I just want you to do it at a tempo, but still think of it in one. So it has just a little bit more bounce and movement. Okay, because later on, I know we're out of time, but later on at the un peu moins vite, for me, that's after rehearsal 12. The un peu, that's supposed to be probably at the tempo you just played this beginning at. Okay, so it means a little bit less fast. So I would just experiment with the faster tempo because your articulation is incredible. Your double tonguing is really great. Yes, I don't think you're gonna have a problem with this. You just have to, push it up a few notches every time you practice. But try to get a little bit faster. But I think I have to let you go. But bravi, both of you. Well done.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Blue Shelton, and I will be playing the Iber Flute Concerto, first movement.
gaga. Really nice. This is just one of the hardest pieces in our repertoire. One of them. One of them. I think this is definitely technically, this and the Rodrigo concerto are up there at technically crazy concertos for us. And I'm just so amazed that, especially your generation, how I'm assuming you're sophomore as well?
I just graduated high school.
Oh, okay. So you just played some college auditions maybe with this piece.
I didn't play this piece. For my like contemporary piece, I played the song Sonatine. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, okay, because I think I heard you play that another time. Great, great, really excellent. Very well prepared, especially on your end, just really, really nice. Yeah, this piece is just, you know, we're usually like, where do we start? You know? So yeah, Ibert, you know, I don't know if many people know, he was a prolific writer at his time. He wrote like 2 ballets, you know, he wrote some operas, he wrote film music. So, you know, this piece, you know, it just sounds like kind of a, you know, a combination of all those different genres a little bit, but to me, it sounds like jazz. You know, can you kind of, you know, vibe with that? Yeah, it just sounds jazzy. I can just kind of hear John Coltrane just, you know, just kind of riffing it. So yeah, it should never really feel forced, right? Which is ridiculous to say, I know, because there's so much happening here. You feel like you got to force it out, right? It should feel very melodic. It should feel very, again, to kind of borrow some concept I was taking from the last piece, it should feel very much this way, not this way. You know, it's just, that's not going to happen. These are long phrases. And not only are they long, but they're very collaborative. You and the piano or the orchestra. First of all, bravo to the pianist who's playing this transcription. I just can't imagine, you know, a pianist trying to play a whole orchestral part. Okay. So yeah, she's the brass, she's the wind, she's everything. So, so what you're doing is very collaborative with her, especially with her right hand. Okay. So in the beginning, the strings have and you just continue that. You know, like they started this line for you and you just continue it. So I would love, you know, if the pianist is willing, because it's just a lot of notes, it's very notey. I would love to just kind of hear the collaboration between the flute and the right hand of the piano. Is that awkward?
Just right
here.
Is that, yeah, okay. So, yeah, so there are times where, Blue, right? I remember the name because I really like that name. Is that your like real, is that a nickname or is that your real name?
No, that's the name of my birth certificate.
I love it. I love it. It's like Blue Ivy Carter as well. I like it. So I think when you do not have the line Blue, you should be coming back and should try not to be like too aggressive with sometimes like at the beginnings of your trills, you know, I hear you accenting them, right? But those are points where the pianist is taking over your line. Like for instance, do you have rehearsal numbers?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect, perfect. At 4, rehearsal 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars after rehearsal 4. Okay, you have the trill. But the piano has a she's continuing what you played 4 bars prior. Okay, so you can come back in texture, you know, because there's some points where you're going to be in the foreground, you're going to be in the background. you can come back. So what I was hearing, I'll just try to, there's no way, I haven't played this forever. There's no way I'm going to play it as clean as you. Okay. But I want you to come back specifically on your trills. See how I'm coming back on the trills instead of, the trills don't really seem to have much importance when the piano has the rest of the line. So that's why I want you to play this with just the piano's right hand. Okay, so come back on those trills, more of a delicate articulation, more of a, do you ever use poo instead of tu? No? Even for French music, that is good to have in your arsenal. It's a lot of just sound coming out of nowhere. And we're just like, how are we supposed to do that? You do that with a poo. Okay. And that's actually very similar to what jazz players do, because jazz players use a lot of different articulations. When they're articulating things like this, they'll do things like do 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 do. They use different consonants for their tonguing. So we should be able, we're not jazz musicians, or maybe you are, I'm not sure. But most of us are not. You're not. Okay. So yeah, more delicate articulation when you do not have the line. Make room for her. Okay, so start from the top. I like your tempo. It's not too fast. It's not definitely not slow. Okay. All right, with the right hand, please. That's already, I love this. I love this exercise. Beautiful. Are you hearing how the two lines, come together? It's probably a little bit more clear with one less line on the piano. Bravo, piano. I keep calling you piano, but I forget your name.
Anna.
Anna. We've met in person. Good to see you again. Okay. So again, Blue, do you hear that heavy articulation on your trills? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. Why don't you just try it alone? Because it's difficult to just kind of do it after 4 bars of being a little bit more intense. It's difficult to kind of come back. Can you just play it 4? Just the flute. That's better. That's already better. Very good. What else was I going to say? Oh, something I also like to tell people to do, because when this piece is requested in an audition or whatever, it's requested because people want to hear your technique. Okay, they want to hear the fluidity of your technique, obviously. But I like to recommend, as much as possible, that your fingers never, I don't know if you can see my flute, your fingers never really get higher than 1 inch off of your keys. Like this, I never do. It's just, you have a long way to go to try to get to all of these notes. So I just kind of hover. That's the only way that I would do this. Okay. Now I noticed, your fingering position looks great. Your posture's great. Everything's great. But I noticed you kind of do this a lot. It's a lot of, and I can even hear the key click sometimes. Okay. So why don't you experiment bringing it a little bit lower? Okay. I'm going to give you a lot of information. So, write it down or just take it in, just tips in helping you with this movement. That's one thing that's huge for you. Because I've been noticing that throughout. I'm amazed that you can get out, but it'll be a lot more fluid if you're hovering. And then lastly, you're the pianist. don't be afraid of following the contour of the line. Okay, so that's again a jazz idea. When you're hearing the line go up, come down, you should be going with it. Don't attempt to make everything sound, I know I said to think this way, but I mean think this way phrase-wise. But don't try to make everything sound like no. Come back here. Okay. And then there's even this little section. I just love all these contours that he writes in. So after 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it should be a mini hairpin going up and coming down. I hear you and the pianist. Do that, please. Anna, do that, please. 1, 2, 3, 4 after rehearsal 3. And just grow and come back. Yes, yes, that makes a huge difference, being aware of these contours. Okay, so start from the top. Let's still continue this one line in the piano.
From the beginning? Yeah, with the one, yeah.
From the beginning of the piece?
Yeah.
Let's do it again, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Bravo, bravo. Huge changes there. Thank you. I know it's awkward for you, Anna, because you probably learned the lines simultaneously, but I appreciate you just going through the exercise with us so Blue could hear how he comes in and out of the contrast. Very good, very good. And great articulation on those trills, Blue. Wasn't as aggressive. Okay. So more and more of that. This next section, yeah, it's a lot more calm. Okay. Well, first of all, I like to ask, because it's so technical, are there any specific notes or anything that you're needing help with? Any fingering that will be helpful? It doesn't sound like you're struggling anywhere, but just in case, are there any fingerings?
The only thing that I have trouble with finger wise, I think, is the last measure 24, the second, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 7 from the end, because I usually forget to grab the beat on the second beat, and then it gets messy and stuff.
7 from the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. 2, 3. I have you on a D flat.
Oh, 8. Or no, 6? Okay. 6. Okay.
Oh, 6. Okay. Oh, yeah. Grabbing the B on the second beat. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, there's no magic fingering for that. Okay. I was more at the high register. Huh?
Shit, though, I think, yeah.
That's a challenging, motive to play. I think, again, a motive like that will be really helped with you staying closer to your fingerboard. And I've noticed, I think why you do this is because your fingers tend to be flat. And a lot of flutists do this. You know, we're just trying to get the job done, trying to get the keys to, you know, click. So what you want though is more of a curve. In order to hover, your fingers definitely, you can see that in my knuckles, you know, I never do this. It's never just flat. Always is a little bit curved, plus the pinky. So yeah, getting to that D flat after the B, that's challenging unless you're hovering. So just keep experimenting with that, Blue. Really experiment with this idea of being curved. By the way, you said you just took auditions, so are you going to college or?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at Manhattan School of Music in the fall.
Fantastic, congratulations. You're gonna do well there. Okay, so let's continue on into the next section at 6. The only slow section of this piece, or more lyrical. Good. So this is another example of just how, I mean, this piece is unique compared to other concertos. It's not just flute line and everyone's accompanying. You know, it's very collaborative. So after 9, 1, 2, 3, 4 after 9. Well, the piano has actually 3 after 9. She has this crescendo, this chromatic line into your line. So what she finishes, what dynamic do you think that the piano is finishing at? If you're beginning at a piano, what do you think that dynamic the pianist is finishing at is?
Piano, right?
Right. So this is not like the beginning. This is very much like not quite a call and response, but it's a communication. So none of this should be forte for you, Blue. It's all piano. Okay. So yeah, take it easy here. You do have a crescendo later on, but then it comes right back to piano. So again, thinking about that more delicate articulation that we were talking about in the beginning. Want to try this section? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So maybe before 2 before 9. Good. Yes. Good. So take your time at that raw, Blue. You know, no one's going anywhere until you do. Okay. Daga, 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 dee, da, dee, da, dee, da. Ba-da-dee-da, 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 ba-da-dee-da-da. You guys are doing a great job with following the contours. Okay. Um, so just maybe a little bit of detail work. So again, it's just, you know what, Lou, it's just the articulation for me. For some reason, it's standing out. Maybe because you're contouring so well that, you know, there are places where you're coming back and the articulation sounds so out of place. You know, like it's so aggressive, but you just came back. So I'm like, why is he, you know, accenting there? You don't have to do that. Are you thinking that you're accenting these notes because you're afraid you won't be heard?
Which ones in like particular?
So let's see. It's actually, it's in general, even when you're at forte section. So at 11, you have this, I'm hearing da ta da ta, you know, instead of it just being a little bit more lyrical as the line calls for.
I like just fall in a habit of using like a harsher articulation because like that's what most of the pieces like, you know, like very like, yeah.
You know, maybe we should just change that idea. Because remember, I was telling, I'm glad you said that. You know, you're being real, you're being honest. But think about these jazzers that I was talking about, the different articulations that they use. Unfortunately, when flutists are taught to articulate, you know, the syllables we use are taka taka. I don't know who invented that. It should never have been that. It should always be dugu dugu, at least to start with. Okay, it's just softer. Taka taka is way too pecky. But yeah, I think within this piece, you should be thinking more dugu or dugga 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 dugga. The lower in your throat and the lower in your mouth is going to be able to, well, first of all, you're in the high register most of the time. So you need to be lower in your mouth so that it doesn't sound so shrill up there. Okay, there's a difference between there's a difference between I'm 1, 2, 3, 3 before 9. Actually, that's not a good spot. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 before 9. You know, it's just so shrill. If I am to do the ta instead of duh, here's duh. It's just a little bit more fluid when it's a softer tongue. So yeah, I'm hearing a lot of ta, but you're being heard. Don't worry, because you're in the top register. You're going to be heard. Okay, you're going to be heard. But it definitely, I think in general, your articulation needs to change. I think change it to a do or a duh. I think dugu probably better for you. It's closer to, no, duh. Do duh. That's closer to. So yeah, so what I was hearing at 11, you know, your downbeats are very strong, very strongly articulated. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 after 11. You don't need to do that. You know? So can y'all start somewhere around there, maybe 2 before 11? Please. Very good. Articulation was fabulous, Blue, until you got to 3 after 12. Let me just hear you do 3 after 12. It's not it's not that. Let me ask you, how do you change your syllables? Where are you putting your tongue?
Like I think it's like not like where I'm putting my tongue, but like how I'm like using my tongue.
That's interesting. I think it's a combo. You're right. How you're using it, the force of your tongue, but it's also where you place it too. You know?
It's like more back for like do, right? Yeah.
Yes. Good. It should be more where your teeth meet your gums. I think you're giving me forward tonguing. It sounds like you're out of your mouth. I'm not sure. Are you out of your mouth? It sounds like it, but I'm not sure.
I think, yeah, like I'm going towards that direction more.
Okay. So just lift it a little bit and make sure your tongue is flat. You don't want it scrunched against your teeth. Okay. Because that's going to, the way that your tongue is positioned is going to create the articulation that's going to come out. So you want as relaxed of a tongue as possible. And that's going to create a relaxed articulation. Bring it behind your teeth. Let me just hear you do that section, please.
Right? Yeah.
That was already so much better. So much better. Yeah. And maybe you just made one change, bringing it behind your tongue. Yeah. You don't want to over articulate up there. You don't have to. You have a lot of ability, a lot of sound. You don't have to do that. Okay. Great. We have this next section, which is basically a recap. So take us through the end of the piece and just incorporate a lot of these things I'm talking about with articulation and the contour of the line. Have more fun with this piece. Don't let it freak you out. Okay. Don't let it freak you out. Have fun with what the musical lines are doing, the ebb and the flow, the up and the down. Have fun with that and relax your articulation. And I think that's the way to go for you. So I'm going to start around, where do you come in after 13? Where you come in after 13? So maybe 14? Let's see. Yeah. Bravi, bravi. Yes, yes. I'm hearing the differences. Like you're a quick learner. You're incorporating all the things that I'm talking about more regularly. I can definitely hear you having more fun with these contours, and it's sounding a little bit more jazzy, as much as it can. You know, you're not swinging it or anything, but it's really great. So yeah, I think the big takeaway for you is just to remember to be thoughtful about your articulation in everything that you do. Never use the same articulation. That gets boring. It should be within the character of the piece. And think about where you're placing your tongue. Think about where you're placing your tongue, because you want it to be less aggressive at the time. But bravi, difficult work. And good luck at school next year. It's going to be a good challenge for you, but it'll be fun. Who are you studying with?
Maria Martin.
Oh, fantastic. She's great. Great. Have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you to everyone who played this evening. You sounded wonderful. Thank you to Julietta. We are going to, of course, also thank you to Anna. We're going to have a couple minutes for question and answer. Kids, you better have your questions ready. But actually, first there's one from the chat. Julietta, she says, the question is from Diane, and she says, preparation, I think it's preparation breath. How important is that for a young flutist to be able to follow through with the intended musical demands of a composition?
Preparation breath, is that what you said, Molly?
And breathe, but I'm not sure that makes sense in the context of the question.
I don't think I'm hearing everything. I'm sorry. I didn't even hear everything that you just said. Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you were able to see the chat, but I think the question is really about preparing yourself for breathing and how important that is in relationship to the composition.
Oh, okay. Yes. Very important. There's so many different types of breaths that we flutists have to be mindful of, right? So like, for instance, I think about like Afternoon of a Faun. Okay, that's the big piece that flutists play because we go crazy because people are telling us, oh, we got to play the whole phrase in one breath, the whole first phrase in one breath. And I find, since I don't circular breathe on that because it compromises the tone, I find for me that I have to literally take 4 bars of breath in order to get that phrase out. So I will just take my time. I'll be breathing before the conductor puts down the downbeat. So that takes a lot of preparation because what I'm trying to do with breath, I talk about this a lot, but there's this famous tuba player that used to be the Chicago Symphony, Arnold. I always forget his last name when I'm actually speaking of it on the spot, but he opens up his back a lot because he only had one lung. And in order to produce the sound that a tuba needed, he needed to make time to open up his back as well to use all the lung capacity. So flutists need to be mindful of using all areas of their lungs when they're preparing for a long phrase like that. That's essentially what I'm saying. But then you have, the catch breaths where you don't really have time to really catch the breath that you need. And so I think in order to get the maximum amount of air on those catch breaths, I find they have to be silent breaths. So catch breaths are usually so quick, they're like this, and that's all you have. But if you keep your throat open and think of an O, then that will give you the maximum amount of air that you need in a small amount of time. Okay, but if you're doing this, thinking more of an E, that's limiting the amount of air you're taking in. So always be mindful, what syllable are you hearing? Are you hearing silence? Then that means you're taking in the maximum amount of air. But if you're hearing noise, you're too tight, you need to open up. So that's my approach to breathing. If both of those 2 breaths, that's how I prepare for those types of breaths, if that's answering the question.
It does, she did write in to correct that she's talking about preparation breath, and it sounds like that's what you were talking about. Also, you guys, you got all that?
Yeah.
You good? All right, do you have a question, Christopher?
Yes.
Please?
Okay. My first question is, what was your journey like as, I would say, a teenager being a flute player?
Oh, probably very similar to y'all's. I had so many different band directors because I was in marching band. I was a band geek, proud band geek. Okay. I had so many wonderful conductors like you have, Mr. Bean and Miss Molly, that just, put so much into me. But for me, I actually started young. I started when I was 6 because my dad played the French horn in the Army band. And prior to that, he was band director in Philadelphia. So he could teach us our instruments. So we started playing before a band was even offered in school. So I say we, my sister played clarinet. So we were just very intense about everything. Like we were in band all the way through high school. We were both in 2 other orchestras. In addition to band, we had private lessons and we had chamber music, flute and clarinet. So we were just like really invested in what we did, and it shaped kind of who we were. So I would say, yeah, my teenage years were intense with music, but that worked for me because I knew I always wanted to be a professional, even though my dad did not want me to be because he was like, it's too hard. He was right. It's very hard to make a living, but if it's your passion and it's what you're called to do on this planet, nothing will stop you from doing that. So that was my teenage years, a lot of practicing. We'd have fun on the side, but it was really just lots and lots and lots of playing in all settings, which has really prepared me for what I do today because I'm a soloist, but I play a lot with orchestras and chamber groups. So what I did then is, what I'm doing now is an extension of what I did then. So it was great preparation. So what you guys are doing, it's great preparation for whatever you want to do in the future. But if it's music, it's great for music.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
How about you, Lou? You have a question?
Do you have any like tips for like school or like college? I mean, yeah. Is that
Tips for, go ahead.
well, music?
Yeah, what do you mean, like getting through college, or what do you mean?
Like, I guess like as like a first year, like, do you have any like tips for me like to do or like things not to do and stuff? Like, I don't know.
What are you the most worried about?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Just
really.
put you on the spot there.
Are you concerned about, anything specific or the college environment? Maybe?
Or maybe like what do you wish someone had told you before
Right.
you went to school?
Exactly.
There you go. Great translation of that. Okay. Blue, I was probably a lot like you prior to college, just practicing nonstop because I wanted to get into the school of my dreams. So I was up to like 7 hours of practicing a day before I went to college auditions. I know what I did was crazy because I had finished a lot of my school credits in high school for the most part. So I only had like 3 classes in high school. So the rest of the time I was in the practice room practicing. It was a little crazy because my freshman year, I ended up developing tendonitis. Not a good thing to develop. Yeah, for about 6 months. It's hard to remember that now because I don't deal with it now because I've had fabulous teachers that have taught me how to pace myself. But I didn't know how to do it then. So for 6 months, I couldn't play an orchestra. I couldn't do chamber music. I wore, what do they call them? Like a splint, when I had the whole physical therapy twice a week. And so I think I overdid it. You would probably agree. Okay. So yeah, I think it's important to practice because we're in a competitive field, of course, but it's important to practice smart. It's really quality over quantity. You don't need to do 7 hours anytime. It's just too much. Like a good 3 hours of focused practicing is just really all you need. And I would space it up, throughout the day because you're going to be playing in Manhattan School, which means you're in orchestra, chamber music, you're doing the whole thing. And then you have additional like liberal arts courses, but you really want to balance yourself better, practice smart and just don't overdo it. And yeah, don't think that more practicing is going to make you better. I think what will make you better quicker is doing lots of score study, studying the score, listening to recordings, and going to concerts. That's all practicing as well. And I didn't do a lot of score study when I was younger. What I would do is try to learn a piece this way, but I wasn't doing this. I wasn't thinking about like what's happening harmonically. I wasn't thinking about what the other parts have around me. I just kind of wanted to experience it. But now I'm older, more mature, hopefully. And I do a lot more score reading. And you'll even find me before a concert. I'll just be kind of reading my score, especially a solo concert. Be reading my score just to remind myself of different places where I'm aligning with the players around me. That's more effective work. It's more effective. So balance your time between those things and your practicing, and I think you'll get started off well.
Yeah, that sounds stellar. Caleb?
Yeah, it's gonna be fabulous.
What was your experience after college and being a professional musician, and like what kinds of things did you do, and yeah, just in general?
Yeah. Great question, Caleb. After college, so generally, if you want to be a musician, and I knew I also wanted to teach as well because I come from a family of teachers, it's good to get your degrees, and it's probably good to get them one after another. So after my undergrad, I immediately got my master's. So yeah, I ended up, I went to Juilliard for my undergrad, finished. I opted not to go back to Juilliard for my master's for a couple different reasons, but it was mainly that I wanted a new start, a change of pace. So I went over to England, talk about change of pace, to get my master's with a fabulous teacher there named Peter Lloyd. And he's the one actually that corrected my tendonitis. So lots of playing there. What I did, I thought that I was on the track to become just an orchestral player. So I was practicing excerpts like crazy, didn't do the 7 hours like I was telling you guys I did before college. I got smarter, but I was practicing a lot for orchestral auditions, and Peter used to be in the London Phil and the BBC, so that was his forte. So lots and lots of practicing. I went for auditions at Baltimore, National Symphony, never made it to the finals. So I usually made it to the semis. But after about my 7th audition, I was like, I'm not loving this. Okay. I mean, I just wasn't loving the process. And after speaking to Robert Langevin, who is the principal now of the New York Philharmonic, he loved orchestra so much that he auditioned 32 times before he found his first position in Montreal, I believe, 32 times. And I after talking to him, I was like, no, I don't see myself doing that. Many people can do that. You love playing an orchestra, you should do that. But just know that sometimes it takes effort and time. So for me, I was still just trying to figure out where I kind of fit in. I knew I loved soloing. That's like number one for me. But I ended up going back to Virginia where my mom lived, and I became a band director for a while. And liked that. And I had 30 private students on top of it. So lots of teaching. And then I just figured out I'm not playing as much because I was teaching almost all day. So I went to what's now called Ensemble Connect in New York City. It's a Carnegie Hall Juilliard program where you teach in the school systems, but you also play lots of concerts. So it's like a fellowship. So I did that for a few years. And now that's just kind of pushed me into a place where I can now do everything, So after the Academy, I ended up winning Astral Artist in Philadelphia. So that launched soloing for me, a solo career. And I play a lot with Orpheus Chamber Orchestra and lots of great orchestras, even Black Pearl in Philly with Kenny, And so I play in orchestras as well. And I teach at Brooklyn College. And I'm about to go finish and get my doctorate at Stony Brook University. I can't believe it. So, it's just for me, it's always, doing what feels right and not putting myself in the box that many people, well, not the box, that's not the right word, not following the road that most classical musicians follow, right? A lot of my colleagues went for orchestras, Some of them got jobs, some didn't, some went on their own path, but just not letting anyone else define my path for me. So in me doing that has allowed me to incorporate all of my loves into my career. So yeah, my track has kind of been up and down, but it's been exciting. It's been very exciting. Always commitment to it, knowing that I can make a living, because I never gave into that myth of that, oh, we can't make a living as a musician. You know, you can. You just have to do what you're very passionate about and follow through.
Advice. Thank you, Julietta. I think, unless anyone has any other questions, I don't see any more in the chat. So I think that will conclude our Q&A portion. Thank you so much, Julietta. This has been a fantastic masterclass. You guys can go sit down if you want. Say goodbye and thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
You guys were wonderful. Good luck with your futures and everything that you do musically.
Yeah, thank you. And believe it or not, this is our last, well, no, of course it's June, so you can for sure believe it, that it's our last masterclass of the season. Like everyone else, it's been very different. I want to thank Alexi, who's been our tech genius for this whole year. He's going like this. And also, of course, I want to thank Kenny and Rachel, who do all the hard work to put it together. PMAY, the Philadelphia Music Alliance for Youth, with whom we partner to make sure that we can bring it to everyone here. And everyone have a fantastic summer. We'll see you next year.